Hey guys, it's John Adamson, the Rehab Man Documentation Guru, wrapping up on a dreary, rainy, kind of miserable day in some respects, but in others, it's a good day because it's now done. And I'm done with my documentation, which, if you're watching this tonight, you're done with your documentation probably, so that's a good thing. So, we're going to talk about a case study today, a patient that I recently saw. I'm going to give you some particulars without spilling the beans on the HIPAA violating stuff. She is a lady in her 80s. Up until about a month ago, she was fully independent, living on her own. She would use a cane occasionally, just for going out and things like that, but otherwise got around without a device. And then it went downhill from there. She had a cardiac event. She developed congestive heart failure, no history of heart attacks, but became very edematous, shortness of breath, went into the hospital, and unfortunately also went into acute respiratory distress and failure, and ended up being intubated for a time and came out of that and came home not on oxygen. So she is not on any supplemental O2. So when I saw her about mid morning when I went to see her at her house. And she seemed to be resting fairly comfortably, a little shortness of breath with the mask on, but without the mask, she was okay. She reported that she was feeling generally kind of blah, kind of weak, and she said since she had been home, that was a consistent issue with her uh, while after she took her medicine. She had had her dose of medicine about half hour or so before I got there for all her medicines, including her cardiac medicines, which were all new. And nursing had come out to do an assessment the day before, and nursing was going to be working with her on medication management and things like that. When I saw her, I did note that her initial blood pressure was running in the mid upper 90s to over the high 50s. Uh, when I had her do a little bit of activity with me, her blood pressure was about 100 over 60. Meanwhile, her heart rate response was appropriate but muted, and likely muted because of her cardiac meds. And her pulse oximetry reading, uh, my reader is not always the best, so I don't always trust it. But at rest, she was in the mid 90s, and then after she did just a little bit of activity with me, it dropped briefly to the 80s, but it did come up. But it was clear that just doing a little bit of activity, which the furthest I had her walk was the tug, which is 10 feet out, 10 feet back, and it was exhausting for her. I also did a visual inspection, and I looked at her feet. And, I've advised this in the past, always look at your patient's feet. They're the canary in the mine shaft. And what was interesting about her feet was that they had significant dark redness, and the toes were a little bit purple. And the daughter said, "Oh, that's unusual. I didn't see that the other day." And what was also significant was she had no distal edema whatsoever. And she reported no shortness of breath with lying down flat. So I've shared in the past that those are two really good questions. One, to observe distal edema, and two, flat ability to lie flat without shortness of breath. The two main CHF markers you should be looking at. But the blue feet, the new onset blue feet with low blood pressure for a person in her 80s, I mean, you're hovering in the 90s over high 50s. That's pretty darn low. And she's telling you she's feeling weak. And she just had congestive heart failure, and she's got no distal edema. Uh, Everything seems to point to she's too low volume, too low volume on fluids, and she's on a diuretic, of course. Let me take a sip here. LaCroix. This is Not a paid product placement, by the way, of course. But it's pretty good. Anyway, her feet. Why are her feet turning purple? Why is she she was saying that she felt kind of chilly. And she looks stressed to me. Any ideas? Any thoughts? I have thoughts. I always have thoughts. So I'm thinking her system's just completely stressed out. And you might remember from back in the day called school physiology. And if somebody has like a sympathetic nervous system response, like a flight or fight response, what happens to distal extremity blood flow? It's reduced. It's cut off. Like if your volumes drop fluid-wise, the body's got to maintain perfusion with the important stuff, the organs, the heart, the head. So the extremities, they suffer. They end up suffering. Oh yeah, and her appetite's screwed up. Why is that? Because in a flight or fight response situation, pardon me, I didn't mean to do that. In a flight or fight response situation, the body is conserving energy for what you need to get out of dodge. And so she was shunting blood away from her distal extremities. Her hands were a little bit on the cold side too. I was able to get a reading after a while, pulse oximetry wise. But her toes are purple. Why are her toes purple? Why are they cold? She's in a lot of stress. So I contacted the doctor's office. I instructed the daughter, who had an LPN background, to really push fluids. The lady was not on any fluid restriction, and just keep a good eye on her. I mean, she at rest she was fine. She's just feeling kind of the, but I mean she's breathing okay. Her oxygen's okay. No emergency situation that I could see, but they need to get some fluids in her. And by doing that, increasing her volumes, that would be less stress on her body, for one thing. That added volume would then mean that the vital stuff could get the oxygen and the nutrients it needed, and then the body would have enough capability of supplying distally at that point. And so, anyway, I did contact the doctor about it and let them know all that was going on with them. I don't know what the resolution was, but I also alerted the nurse what I did so that they could follow up. But just a reminder, keep a good eye on your patients and think through physiologically what might be going on. Am I wrong? I might be. I've been wrong once or twice before, so I mean it's possible I'm wrong this time. But I think I had a handle on what might be going on. So anyway, hope you're having a great day. Take care. God bless.